And you describe yourself on your website as a globally recognized thought leader. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you give paid speeches, do you?
On occasion,
Alright folks, this one's a doozy. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a perfect example of elite smugness colliding headfirst with common sense, courtesy of Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. If you've watched Kennedy before, you know the routine. He plays the all shucks country lawyer, asks questions that sound harmless, almost naive, and before you realize what's happening, you're stuck in a logical bear trap. He's calm, polite, and absolutely ruthless, and today's guest of honor? A Tulane University professor who, and yes, this is real, proudly labels himself a globally recognized thought leader on his own website. You can't parody that. What follows is a clinic in exposing hypocrisy. This is the kind of do as I say, not as I do nonsense that drives normal Americans crazy. We're talking about someone who scolds the public over carbon emissions while his own institution happily cashes checks from the same industries he claims are destroying the planet. The exchange is sharp, uncomfortable, and frankly hilarious. This is what happens when lofty theories meet real-world questions. So buckle up. Let's roll the clip and watch how a self-proclaimed thought leader responds when reality shows up uninvited.
And you have your own website, KeenanClimate.com, is that right?
yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And you describe yourself on your website as a globally recognized thought leader. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you give paid speeches, do you?
On occasion, I do.
You have your own agent, I believe, according to your website, Lee Bureau.
This is correct.
And how much do you charge per speech?
It varies depending on the audience, the amount of preparation work that goes, and the amount of follow-through. Usually,
The last paid speech you gave, how much did you receive?
I'm happy to follow up on.
You don't remember?
I do not.
Do you give that money to Tulane?
I do not.
You keep it?
Yes, this is outside of my capacity as a professor.
Right.
As is
Now,
standard course.
you recently sent a letter you recently joined a lot of other academics. You signed a letter demanding that elite institutions and universities stop accepting money from fossil fuel companies. Is that correct?
This is correct.
You consider Tulane an elite university?
I would like to think that we have a high standard of excellence in our education and our research.
Okay. Well, the Murphy family of Murphy Oil and the Deming family of Murphy Oil have recently given Tulane $25 million. Have you called on Tulane to give that money back?
Well, it's not, they didn't give that money to my unit or the department or school that I work
Have you called on Tulane to give that money back, or you think that's okay for them to keep it?
It's their prerogative, not mine.
Okay. But yet you just signed a letter saying that all elite universities should refuse fossil fuel money. Did you put a footnote in there and say, except my own?
Well, what I'd like to say, Senator, is that I believe it raises a conflict of interest for those that research climate change that are supported by the fossil fuel industry.
But then why don't you ask Tulane to give the $25 million back?
Well, I think in the context, if that money were to be used to support climate research, information, disinformation, or whatever it may be, then that may be an appropriate conflict of interest. But I think in the context of which
You don't see the hypocrisy here?
It is a hypocrisy in those that may read and interpret it as such.
Maybe it's like Washington. If there weren't double standards, there wouldn't be standards at all. Let me ask you this. You also participated in another article here criticizing Houston for building new buildings and McMansions. And you said, I'm going to read your quote. I don't want to misquote you, Professor. That means we have to change our consumer preferences. You could have a super efficient, energy efficient mega mansion in Houston or the suburbs, but it's still a mansion. You're still over-consuming space. Did you say that?
Yes, sir. That's based on work as a member of the IPCC. Our research suggested that reducing our footprint in terms of total spatial footprint would have significant impacts on the decarbonization of the built environment.
And so you're saying that people should live in smaller houses because larger houses contribute to CO2 emissions?
100%, Senator.
Okay. Well, recently, Tulane finished the Commons. It was 77,000 square feet, $55 million. Recently, Tulane finished the Gold Ring Woldenberg Business Complex, $35 million to complete, 92,000 square feet. Boy, that's a McMansion. Musafir Hall, 23,000 square feet. Paul Hall, 36,000 square feet. Richardson Hall, 50,000 square feet. Housing redevelopment phase 1, 230,000 square feet at Tulane. Have you called upon Tulane to stop these buildings?
Sir, the habitable space within those units are roughly the size of the conference room back there and are indeed quite small.
But they contribute to... Does
everything that we do, sir.
Does the Commons contribute more to climate change than a McMansion in Houston? You were pretty quick to criticize the people of Houston for wanting to build, you thought, McMansions. But you don't criticize your own university?
I don't find that to be equivocal comparison between space meant for students who must reside at a university.
You don't see the hypocrisy in that?
It is your finding and interpretation, sir.
But you don't see the irony of the hypocrisy?
I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Okay. I kind of gathered that would be your answer.
Did you catch his expression at the very end? That wasn't confusion. That was the look of someone who knows the floor just vanished beneath him. Kennedy took this guy apart calmly, methodically, and honestly. It was impressive to watch. Let's walk through what actually happened here, because this wasn't random. Kennedy knew exactly where to press. He starts with the ego, always the tell. Right out of the gate he asks, you describe yourself as a globally recognized thought leader. And without blinking, the professor replies, yes, sir. No humility. No hesitation. Just full self-endorsement. That one answer tells you the whole story. This is someone who lives in an academic echo chamber where people applaud each other's virtue and assume they are smarter and more ethical than everyone else. Kennedy clocked it instantly. And once he knew the personality, he followed the money. Next stop, the speaking fees. Kennedy confirms the professor gets paid to give talks and is represented by a professional agent. Then comes the key question, do you give that money back to the university? Answer, no. He keeps it. And look, that's his right. There's nothing wrong with earning money. But you don't get to preach about collective sacrifice while personally benefiting from the system you criticize. You can't play monk in public and capitalist in private. Then came the moment everything fell apart. The fossil fuel issue. Kennedy brings up a letter the professor signed demanding that prestigious universities stop accepting money from fossil fuel companies. Notice how carefully the professor tried not to label Tulane as elite. Even that made him uncomfortable. So Kennedy drops the fact. The Murphy family of Murphy Oil donated $25 million to Tulane, and the professor's defense. Well, it didn't go to my department. That's it. That's the excuse. Think about how weak that is. You tell the world to reject fossil fuel money, unless it's paying for your campus, your buildings, your salary, and your career. Suddenly it's not your concern. As long as the check isn't written directly to your desk, the moral outrage disappears. That's not principle. That's convenience. He's perfectly happy benefiting from oil money behind the scenes while lecturing everyday people for driving to work, and then Kennedy delivers the final blow, the McMansion argument. This professor had written about Houston's housing, criticizing large suburban homes and claiming people need to adjust their preferences for the sake of the planet. Translation: regular families should live smaller and give up comfort. So Kennedy calmly lists Tulane's recent construction projects, enormous new facilities, sprawling complexes, massive glass and steel buildings covering hundreds of thousands of square feet. Then he asks the simplest question imaginable, are those McMansions? And the professor panics. Out comes the academic fog, habitable space per student, density metrics, sustainability jargon. A full word salad meant to avoid a yes or no, but the reality is obvious. Universities are building giant monuments to themselves while telling normal Americans that a modest home is environmental sin. Kennedy wraps it up perfectly. You don't see the irony here? The professor says no. Of course he does. Because admitting it would unravel the entire moral framework he's built his career on. This is why people respond to Senator Kennedy. He doesn't rant. He doesn't insult. He just asks straightforward questions and lets the contradictions speak for themselves. A self-proclaimed thought leader just got outthought by someone grounded in reality. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is there anything more frustrating than elites demanding sacrifice they'll never make themselves? Hit like, subscribe, and we'll keep calling it like it is. Catch you next time.